Hello everybody, this is GeneralJannis, and today I'm looking at the Chaos Terminators from the Chaos Space Marines, looking at their best weapon options, looking at the durability, comparing to some other Chaos Space Marine infantry, and giving you my suggestions of loadout for the squad. So with no further ado, let's get started. Hello everybody, this is GeneralJannis, and today I'm looking at the Defiler, and this has been a successful unit for the LVO Death Guard, but in this video I'm looking at, of course, the Death Guard Defiler, but also looking a bit for the other Chaos factions. So tag along and let's look at the Defiler. So today is the 6th of February, so I have been playing a little bit with the AI. I was trying to make an intro for my video and I was trying to get some new logo, and this is what some of the AI came back with, some GeneralJannis with a calculator and a weapon, but why do they hold the weapons in this strange way? At least there are some flies and tentacles and some, yeah, a bit contagion there from Death Guard. But if you have some tips for me, please post them in the comments. But as I said in this video, let's look at the Defiler, the datasheet for Death Guard, the differences from the other Chaos Defilers. The Chaos Defiler is a bit generic Chaos unit that is available for all the Chaos Marine factions. And then looking at a big chunk of the video is about their best weapons, which weapons to choose. There are quite a few to choose from, and then some configurations, the damage and the boost they can get. Looking also a bit at the durability. It's a 190 point model, so it's quite costly if you lose it, and overall per point comparison compared to other vehicles that we have for Death Guard and other Chaos armies. So with no further ado, let's get started. So looking at the datasheet for the Death Guard Defiler, the Death Guard Defiler is a 190 point model with toughness 10, 8-inch move. It has a 5+ invulnerable save, basically demonic save, 14 wounds, and it has the special ability, the Scuttling Walker. So each time it can move, normal move, advance or fall back move. It can move over friendly monster vehicle models, and also importantly terrain features that are below 4 inches, as if they were not there. So this can give you a bit more mobility. Depends a little bit on what terrain you're working with. If you play with the Games Workshop terrain, I believe in their ruins there is a lot of a lot of sections are below 4 inches, so there you might get a bit more more mobility with your Defiler. If you play with WTC terrain, sometimes a lot of the tables they have these very high ruins, and then the Defiler has to walk around, and it's quite a big model. If we look at its weapons, the standard weapon that it has is the Defiler Cannon and the Claw. The Defiler Claw, so the Defiler Cannon is a potent shooting weapon with blast and a long range and damage 3 weapon with a lot of shots, so it is quite good. And the Claw, the Defiler Claw in melee, has some nice attacks with strength 16, and it's really a vehicle killer with d6 plus 1 damage and AP minus 3. You have a choice of you can choose 2x3 sidearms, and the small weapon you can take a combi bolter or a combi weapon, but I'll get back through the different weapons comparison later. And then if we look at the datasheets for the Defilers for the other Chaos factions, for Chaos Space Marines, the Defiler, of course, has the access to the Dark Pact, so you can get sustained hit or lethal hits. And it also has the Demon Forge ability, and the Demon Forge ability is that you can target the Defiler with a counter-offensive strat for 0 CP, and that's a very expensive strat for 2 command points. This is quite good because the Defiler has a lot of melee power, so you can interrupt your opponent for free with a Defiler. That could be an interesting way to play. If we look at the Thousand Suns, there's basically not a big benefit from the faction ability, or they don't have psychic weapons, so you can do something fun with. You can generate Cabal points. Of course, it can benefit if you put the opponent in some Cabal points. Let's say they don't have a save, and then the Defiler can do much more work. And then the Chaos Space Marines, it has standard bolters. The Thousand Suns have Inferno bolters with better AP. So also the twin Inferno heavy bolter here with AP minus 2. This is quite nice, as we will see later on. And the World Eaters Defiler, it has the access to the Blessings of Corn, the Corn Yahtzee, but there you can get a lot of nice things when it charges, or yeah, more hits in melee and stuff like that, more strength. So some nice boosts from the Corn Blessings. And for Death Guard, we saw previously it carries the contagions. It can benefit from the contagions you get with Plague Company, not so much with a new Fly Host detachment. And you have the Plague Bolters, which have lethal hits instead of the standard bolters for Chaos Space Marines and World Eaters. So if we look at the weapons damage output, this is all the weapons baseline that the that the Death Guard Defiler can get, and it's quite similar to what the other units can get. But we have the Defiler cannon here. You can see the damage across a variety of targets, from the lowly Termagants and Guardsmen up to a big enemy knight like a Canis Rex, and the Defiler Claw in melee. We can see that the Defiler cannon has a stable, nice shooting damage. It can take out, let's say, a Terminator from long range. Here I haven't accounted with a blast effect that you would be able to get more shots if the Terminators are a full squad, and also can do some damage, especially versus lighter vehicles like a Rhino. And then if we look at the, let's say, the Defiler Claw in melee, it has a very nice damage against vehicles. It's not for anti-hordes like a Guardsman and stuff like that, but you could take out a Rhino and do a quite nice damage versus vehicles. And then if we look at the option 1 for the side weapon, we see here we have the Twin Heavy Flamer that is twin linked, the Defiler Scourge that gives extra melee attacks, and the Havoc Launcher. We see the Havoc Launcher stands out as very lackluster. So basically your real choice here is, do you want to have the Twin Heavy Flamer that is good versus infantry, and it can also be used to overwatch quite nicely, or you want the Defiler Scourge to add a bit more melee power to that, what you can see the Defiler Claw, because this is extra attacks in melee, so it's shooting infantry or more melee damage and vehicles with a Defiler Scourge. On the next side choice, let's say you have the Reaper autocannon that has devastating wounds, so this can be quite nice if you're rolling a bit hot, and you can get some mortal wounds out of that. It also has inbuilt sustained hits, which is quite good against infantry. The Twin Las Cannon, even if it's twin, you only get one shot, but you can reroll the wound rolls. That can give you a couple of wounds on vehicles from range. And the Twin Plague Heavy Bolter here for Death Guard, it has the lethal hits and sustained hits, and it's twin linked, and this can also do some nice damage, especially versus infantry. And then if we look at the Plague Combi Bolter and the Combi Weapon is better against the elite infantry, and I will show you in the graphs later how all of these weapons compare in a more graphical way. So here is the chart with the same figures that you saw in the table. This is the side arm, let's say the side 1, where you have the choice of Twin Heavy Flamer, the blue line, the Havoc Launcher, the orange line, and the Defiler Scourge, which is melee extra damage. And you see that we can see the Havoc Launcher is quite lackluster, so no thanks for the Havoc Launcher. The Twin Heavy Flamer has some okay damage versus infantry as expected, not so much, tapers off against the vehicles to the right hand side of the graph, and the Defiler Scourge adds some nice, especially melee damage versus vehicles, and not so strong versus infantry as the Twin Heavy Flamer. And remember, if you're in engagement range, you could be shooting the Twin Heavy Flamer into engagement range with no penalty, since it's auto-heating. Then for the other arm, or the other side, let's say where you have the choice of Reaper autocannon, the Heavy Bolter, and the Las Cannon. So here I'm also adding the variants for the Heavy Bolter, the Inferno for the Thousand Suns, and the normal, let's say, Heavy Bolter for Chaos Space Marines and World Eaters. So we see the blue line is the Reaper autocannon, so it has some good damage against infantry, and not so good against vehicles. And then when you see the Heavy Bolters, are the green line is the Death Guard Plague Heavy Bolter. The black line is the Chaos Space Marines. The black dotted line is the Chaos Space Marines and World Eaters. And the light blue dotted line is the Inferno Heavy Bolter for the 1000 Suns. And the orange finally is the twin las cannon that is not very good against infantry, but has the better damage output versus vehicles as expected. So if you are considering a defiler for the 1000 Suns, probably you should go with the heavy Inferno Bolter if you don't want to have the las cannon. For the others, it's a bit close if you want to go with the Reaper autocannon to have more possibility for mortal wounds, or you want to stick with the twin heavy bolter, and then the las cannons if you want to build a more vehicle-oriented, anti-vehicle-oriented defiler. So for the small weapon, the combi bolter or the combi weapon, if we start with a combi weapon, and these are basically the red lines, it is primarily an anti-infantry weapon with a mortal wounds on 4+ to wound, but you only get, it's only not so many shots here at 24 inch, and you see but it's better than the combi bolters against Terminators and the like, and here we see then the combi bolter. The light blue is the 1000 Suns variant, the Inferno combi bolter. The green is Death Guard, and the black is Chaos Space Marines or World Eaters. So probably you should go with a combi weapon for Death Guard, World Eaters and Chaos Space Marines, and the 1000 Suns can consider the Inferno combi bolter, but it's only, as you see here, it's only 0.something wounds on average expected, so it's not something that dramatically will change your damage output. So thinking about some possible configurations for the Defiler, so one variant could be a more anti-infantry shooting type, where you equip it with a Reaper autocannon and a twin heavy flamer. That's some good options for the versus infantry. You could also consider the heavy bolter here instead of the Reaper autocannon here, and probably you would take the combi weapon. And then you could have one that is more vehicle, anti-vehicle and melee oriented. So here it could be the Defiler Scourge, so you get extra melee attacks, and you have the twin las cannon. When you add the Defiler Scourge, you also have more melee to use for the counter-offensive for Chaos Space Marines and World Eaters melee buffs and stuff like that. And for the 1000 Suns variant, probably a nice configuration is the twin Inferno Heavy Bolter or the twin Heavy Flamer. You still have the claw in melee versus vehicles. That could be a configuration here. So in this quite busy table, here we have the total damage output of the Defiler with the various configurations I showed you on the previous page. So if we start with something like a Death Guard Defiler with a twin heavy flamer and the Reaper autocannon, here you see the damage at 24 inch shooting against various targets. So for example, there you would be able to kill 6 guardsmen from range, but then you don't get so much damage output versus vehicles, a couple of wounds here and there. For the 12 inch shooting, you see when the twin heavy flamer comes into effect, you add more damage. You can almost take out 2 Terminators with this shooting from the Defiler 12 inch, but if you have the enemy in contagion range and you have the -1 save, you can do much more damage. So instead of, for example, 5.8 wounds against Terminators, you would be able to do 8.9 wounds per Terminators on average when they are in contagion. And you can see in melee where the claw comes into effect, and also what happens if you add the contagion -1. If you selected the -1 save for Plague Company here, you can increase the damage. For example, for a Gladiator tank in melee, you would be doing 8 wounds, but if you have them in contagion with a -1 save, you would be doing 10 wounds. If we combine, let's say, the shooting in melee, and we have them, let's say, the enemy inside the -1 save contagion, we'll be able to do, let's say, something like 20 wounds for a Rhino, 15 wounds on small knights, taking them out. You could be killing 3 to 4 Terminators, 7 to 8 Marine equivalent, and you can see the graphs here. If we look at the Death Guard Defiler with the Scourge and las cannon, you can get a bit more damage output versus vehicles, especially in melee. But you can see the graphs here, but then you don't get as much damage output versus the infantry because you don't have the twin heavy flamer, and especially in the shooting. If we look at the Chaos Space Marine and the World Eaters. Here I just want to show you with the Defiler Scourge and the last cannon. Here I want to show you the effect of sustained hits packed, so that also can give you a nice boost. So for example, in melee with a dark pack for sustained hits, instead of only doing, let's say, 10 wounds on a gladiator tank, you will be doing 12 wounds with a sustained hits packed. And then finally, the 1000 Sound Defiler with a twin heavy flamer and a twin heavy bolter. You see the figures there from shooting down to melee. Now moving away from the damage output to the durability. So here I'm just showing you the Defiler's baseline durability, how I calculated. This is not point corrected, and in this table a variety of weapons are attacking our Defiler, and the numbers in the table show you how many of those weapons are needed to take out one Defiler or one model in this case. So for example, we can see for the Death Card Defiler, if the enemy is using a heavy bolter, then it would take 34 heavy bolters to take it out. I don't include further buffs here on the enemy might have rerolls and all other shenanigans. I'm just comparing here that what would be a baseline. But if we look for the Defiler, if we look at some strong anti-vehicle weapons like a Freedom Hand in melee, it would almost take one attack from that to take a Defiler out. If you have Angron charging into your Defiler, then it's probably goodbye time, or a big laser distractor or things like that. Remember, for shooting, you could be using the smoke stratagem from the Defiler. It could take some heavy weapon shots, but it's not as durable as the Plaguebear Scroller for Death Guard. You can see here the Plaguebear Scroller has a benefit having 2+ save, so even having less wounds, but the 2+ save really helps it to sustain more, to take more damage. And you can see compared to some other models, and of course for World Eaters you could get some Feel No Pain that would improve the durability more than shown here. So final table for this video. So this is the overall per point comparison of damage and durability, and comparing to a lot of other vehicles for Death Guard and Chaos armies. So the first here I'm showing you the first 4 lines are different Defiler options. Here we have the Death Guard Defiler with Flamer and Reaper autocannon, the Death Guard Defiler with Scourge and Last Cannon, and we see here the average damage across the infantry targets I'm simulating, and the values here are point corrected to 100 points, and we can see then we have the damage versus the average of vehicle targets I'm simulating, and then I have the durability index, so basically the durability that we saw before, but point corrected to some reference. So index 100 for versus heavy weapons is the Predator tank, so that would have an index 100, and we see that Defiler has a index that's 87, which means that it can take less shots per point to kill let's say 100 points. So it suffers a bit on durability, but if we look at the damage output and compare to some other options, it is a bit the Defiler is an all-round damage dealer. It can do quite something in shooting at range, but also in melee versus all kinds of targets. You can optimize, as we saw, more or less if you want it to be more melee or more vehicle or infantry oriented, but you have this you have this all-round damage dealing here, and it has quite high, especially the melee damage output per point is much higher than typical vehicles that you would be able to add for Chaos. If for Death Guard, here we can, for example, compare to Plaguebear Scroller. So the Plaguebear Scroller at 185 points doesn't do as much damage as the Death Guard Defiler, but has better durability per point. The Mephitic Blightholder is a bit not so strong, even at 90 points for the damage dealing, but it has a little bit of melee. Here I'm also showing the 30 Bloodthorn with the Speeders having a bit shooting, but if you want to have more shooting, the Predators are quite good for points. At 130 points, the Predator Destructor has very high damage output versus infantry and shooting, as you can see here, one of the highest possible, and the Predator Annihilator with Last Cannons has better shooting against vehicles, but of course they don't have anything in melee. The Land Raider, also a bit expensive and more of a transport. And then the Chaos allies that we can bring. The Wardog Brigand has a very good damage, let's say shooting for both infantry and vehicles. And if we look at melee, then the Wardog Carnivore at 140 points has better melee damage output per point than the Defiler, and it also is faster, 12-inch move, and also has objective control 8. So here I hope this table can help you a little bit with tailoring your armies. So reaching to the summary and final thoughts, the Defiler is an all-rounder regarding the damage it can deal for both shooting and melee versus infantry and vehicles. It is a big model. It has this extra mobility that it can pass through friendly monsters and vehicles, and also the 4-inch terrain. It can be an intimidating target that could get a lot of, let's say if you move it up the board, people would be afraid of the claw probably, and maybe they will focus some shooting on that rather than some of your other units. The best weapon configuration depends on the role and that you want to have for it. The best choices for in my opinion are you take the Twin Heavy Flamer if you want to have more infantry and shooting and also better possibility of overwatch, or add the Defiler Scourge for more melee and vehicle damage, and you should forget the Havoc Launcher option. And then if you want to maximize on the shooting and versus vehicles especially, you would take the Last Cannon. Otherwise the Reaper Autocannon or the Heavy Bolter would be your choice versus infantry. Reaper Autocannon and Heavy Bolter are quite close as you saw previously, so it's not a very big difference here. And as we saw, the durability per point is not very good versus heavy weapons. It's less than what you would get per point than putting a Predator tank on the table. So you should consider the placement, keep it in cover, using the smoke where it's needed, go make some melee damage, etc. So what do you think? And let me know your experience with Defilers. This concludes my video. Let me know what you think. And if you have some questions or comments, I'm really happy to read them and answer you in the comment section. And if you have some suggestions for analysis in my channel, please let me know. And as always, a big thanks for everybody watching, liking and subscribing and commenting on the videos. So with this, GeneralJannis signing out. Stay safe out there, and bye-bye.